So he says, a person who practices morality, sonam means someone who has morality, means someone who cultivates morality, who is able to live for a long time, longer than otherwise would be the case if they didn't take care of their body, then that will give them more opportunity to make progress, spiritual progress. And therefore, for that reason, despite the unfavorable nature of the body, we should still take care of it. Okay. And it says, so here it says, what this verse is meant to convey is, if the body is something that is harmful to us, then why, or maybe we should not take care of it, right? And there are, in fact, one of the extremes, which even the Buddha himself practiced, was there is a belief in a very clearly stated belief that one aim of asceticism is to overcome our attachment to the body by depriving it of pleasure, right? And that's like takes extreme, form is self-mortification, right? And in certain religions, even in Christianity, I think this was practiced. We see in I think I see that there are certain Islamic practices where they flagellate themselves and
the
Shias do, as a way of sort of the idea is that the body is the source of our attachment to pleasure. So if we practice asceticism, it's a way to overcome that attachment. In Buddhism, that is seen as inappropriate, right? And that's really one kind of what should I say, corollary, or one kind of inference that you can draw from this verse is, despite the suffering nature of the body and despite all the other kind of negative aspects of our physical existence, the fact that we do indulge our sensory pleasures through the body, that doesn't mean that we should deprive ourselves of any kind of comfort or even health as a way of sort of overcoming our attachment to pleasures. So, means it is meant to reject this what is it? A dokpa can mean a doubt, but it can also mean the thought that, well, maybe we should not take care of the body, sort of as a way of treating the body appropriately, right, in a spiritual way. So he says, that's one way of interpreting the verse. Namba chiktuna means alternatively, right? This is now a second way of interpreting the verse is mitakwe tamgi sem kyoshin, right? Mitakwe tam means the first chapter is on impermanence. The discussion, tam means the discussion about impermanence might cause you to develop some kind of aversion, sempyo, for samsaric existence, right? And Jemba di chicha means then you might draw the conclusion, Ludam mayimba jemba. This body produces dun mayimba. Doesn't only mean meaningless. It means dun mayimba can also mean that which is harmful. Right? So the negative in Sanskrit is not only privative, but it also means the antithesis. So the antithesis of what is meaningful is what is harmful. What is useful or is what is not. It's not simply not useful, but it's something that is then antithetical. 计价 means what use is it? What use is this? Why should I take care of this body which does nothing but bring me harm? Right? Nyamdu nyeba bangba. Nyeba bangba means that nyeba is usually refers to a kind of verbal abuse. Nyeba usually means like to scorn or to criticize. Here nyeba means to treat improperly. So so this verse is meant to overcome any tendency to mistreat the body, right? So there, I should mention, there is something called Jiangbeiyuan Jungyi. Do you know that? Jiangbeiyuan Jungyi. Dutta Guna in Sanskrit.
No.
There are monks or nuns
who take up the special ascetic practices.
Right.
Yeah,
like they do not recline
12,
to go to sleep.
12.
Yeah, 12, right. So they don't lie down. They sleep sitting up.
Yeah.
They don't live in a sheltered building.
Right.
They live under a tree or something like that.
Yeah.
So then, are those extreme forms of practice, or are they? Do they violate what this is saying? Are they in any way causing any distress to the body that's unwarranted? I don't know. Presumably not, right? Okay. Anyway, so that's the two interpretations of the verse. One is that following immediately after the first chapter starts out by saying, no matter what we said about the undesirability of samsaric existence, the fact that it's impermanent, and that we ought to try to, seek a spiritual life, it doesn't mean that, even though samsara is undesirable, it doesn't mean that we should do anything to abuse our bodies. Okay, so that's worth thinking about. And anyway, you can draw some other points from your own experience. Then here was the so-called simile, which comes with many of the verses. It says, and again, not to be critical of the two English translations, but I think they missed the point. So this phrase here is Tsombon means the son of looks like Tsombon means a merchant, right? Or a chief merchant. Actually, the word it does mean someone of Shrestha. Shrestha literally means kind of like it means the best of something. So usually it means like often it's used to refer to someone who's the head of a guild of artisans, for instance, a leader of artisans, and so that would be someone who is somewhat successful in their livelihood. Excuse me. And so, if they're successful, then they're probably reasonably well off. And so, this is the son of someone who's reasonably well off. Means then, so the son of someone who's well off usually is a young person living the good life, right? So, such a person, chinwa chiki jawa. Chinwa means a fetter or a shackle, even. Chinwa chik means by one or the same. Chinwa chiki jawa means connected by one and the same fetter to a gumbo. Gumbo means a thief or a robber. Then Sungwa means that son of the merchant who is shackled to a robber, right? Someone completely different social, category, right? Then normally those people would not associate with one another, right? But they are shackled together by one and the same chain. So that's really what the meaning is. Then it's saying that he has to take care of them, because if they go in different directions, it's going to make it difficult. So this is like he says in the commentary here in John Gutti's commentary. This is what he says. He says, Chakba la sokba droar de la drogmicheva. So he says, suppose the one, the merchant's son wants to go for a walk, right? Well, if the other guy, the guy that he's shackled to, the thief or robber that he's shackled to, if they're not getting along, he's not gonna go along with him. He's not gonna say, "You want to go for a walk?" Well, I don't, right? Then he's stuck. So if he wants to be able to do what he wants to do, he's got to take care of that robber. If he does, then he can get what he wants, which is he wants to go for a walk. So I think you see the metaphor there is pretty clear, right? Saying the body is the kumbo, right? And the Tsongbongibu is, our better selves. And if we want, to, succeed in what we're doing, we have to take care of this robber who causes us all this trouble if we don't take care of him, right? For some reason, it seems to me in these English translations, they don't see it. They don't quite catch that. And they kind of miss that. And they say something like, here, this one, I don't know why they have a problem with that. I mean, maybe they think like that because he's the son of a merchant, he wouldn't be in prison or he wouldn't be shackled or something like that. Doesn't really, so he says, take for example the story about the merchant's son who took care of a thief to whom he had close ties. It's a little bit more than close ties. It's literally to whom he is shackled, right? He didn't want to go that way, so he said, "What's that? He had some close connection." The merchant's son thought, "I will lose him as my companion when I go for a walk." No, because a close tie bound him to the thief, he took care of him even when the thief was in prison. No, so the idea is they're both in prison, right? What? They're in the prison of samsara, right? So anyway,
but attached to each other. I mean, the whole immediacy of the thing is gone.
Yeah, and that one does the same thing. What is that one?
I'm lost. I've read ahead.
Oh, so it's verse 26. It says, "It's like a merchant's son who protected a thief to whom he was bound by a close tie." And then in parentheses it says, "He established this close tie with the thief because he was afraid to lose his companionship in outings, and protected him even when he was put in jail." So,
is there a recension?
What?
Could there be like a recension issue here? Well, are they like if we've lost the Sanskrit and there's multiple translations, then
well, I mean,
different Tibetan understandings, the same Sanskrit phrase, something like that.
Well, I don't know that there are different recensions. Oh, there are a little bit like slightly different spellings and some. But I think you can sort of find more or less what would be the correct Tibetan version. But I take your point in the sense that it's not always clear in the Tibetan translation how to understand or how to take it. And not to blow my own horn, but what I often try to do is when I look at it, I try to imagine what the Sanskrit might be.
Sure.
And if I do that, I think I come up with something that seems more plausible. So I was saying Chiwanchik Drawa, I think Chiwan means literally a fetter, a shackle. Chiwanchik means one and the same shackle is binding the two together. And then, the image is, I think, pretty straightforward. You know, we are tied to our bodies, like it or not, and though our bodies might give us trouble, you know, if we want to, you know, make the most of our lives, we have to treat our body correctly or take care of it, right? And so that's kind of what the point of it is here. So neither of them seem to want to take it that literally, but I don't see any problem with that, and I think that's, I would dare say, even obvious that that's what the meaning is. But
I meant only to ask whether there were different recensions of that. They might be looking at different recensions before.
Well, I mean, I think there were in fact different translations. I don't know how available different versions are. I tend to think that they were working from the Tengyur version. This is a translation of Chandrakirti's Tengyur version. That is a translation of Gesabje's, you know, kind of abridged version of Chandrakirti. So, and I think, honestly, I think they were both aware of each other's work. They both reference. I think what's her name, Ruth Sunam references Karen Lang's translation.
Thanks for entertaining the question.
Oh, sure, no problem. Okay, so that is verse 1. All right, that one's not a big deal. Now, from here, it starts discussing more about how to view the body as having a suffering nature. Okay, so these are not difficult, but I think that nevertheless, we can take the points that the verses say as being substantive, and that not to be dismissed as you know, not particularly profound in their meaning. I think that we should be careful not to fall into that kind of way of thinking and sort of fail to recognize that we're not as sophisticated as maybe we think we are. Okay. Lula Hachang Chagba Poa Ni is the next verse. The heading of it for it is that we should abandon excessive attachment to the body. Okay, so we're saying we have to take care of the body, but we shouldn't overly protect the body. Okay. So he says, Getelu Sungjaina Segwekikon. So he says, well, if you said in the previous verse that we should take care of our body, then should we in fact do so in a, you know, extreme way? Should we go way out of our way to take care of our body? So I'm on board with that, because I find I'm in experience that in the case maybe I make excuse for my own lack of discipline, maybe, I don't know, but I find that, for instance, we can go too far in health food, you know, pursuing, you know, trying to eat nothing but the perfect food, and we can go too far in, you know, going to the gym too much, and, you know, trying to get ourselves in shape. There's another verse in Nagarjuna's letter, right, which says, "Kaze mendanjar, kaze mendanjar lui dojashindame metengte, gachuma nimeche, tajuma nebashiche." So that's a verse about there is a principle of Dharma practice, which is called Sekitsu Rikpa. Sekitsu Rikpa means to know moderation in eating, and that it's quite interesting. So number one, it says that we should eat an appropriate amount of food, not too much, not too little. You know, if we undereat, you know, we can become weakened. It can be harmful to the health. But if we overeat, particularly we overeat, it makes us dull and makes our minds less inclined to practice properly. So you have to kind of Rikpa means to know the measure. It means literally you have to find the, you know, whatever the balance is for eating, number one. Number two, in the same topic, it says that, and this one is a little bit more, I think, appropriate to think about it, because none of us, or very few of us, are ordained people. So for monks and nuns, especially in Hinayana, you're supposed to eat food in a way where you don't relish the food. You just eat the food as a way to sustain your body. Lune bashik chir, that verse is lune bashik chir means only to preserve the body, only to, and so mendang jawa, as if you were taking medicine, right? You take medicine, you don't take medicine because it tastes good. You take it because it's beneficial for your health. So same way, eat what's appropriate for you. But there's another thing that says, gyakchir mala. Gyakba means mada. Mada means a kind of sort of to think of food as something to be like for social pleasure and entertainment, for, you know, to laugh and to, you know, as a way of sort of you know, enjoying yourself and like having a party. That kind of thinking about food. Oh wow, this food's really good. Oh, you know, to be really you know, focusing on the, you know, the taste of the food and how wonderful it is. This whole idea of kind of eating, you know, gourmet type food or really good food. That becomes a something that promotes what is called gyakpa. Gyakpa is a mental affliction. It's called I think in Sanskrit it's mada. Huh? The Sanskrit?
No.
Raga da gaya da gyaga sa gya. Gyakpa. Then it's a it's sort of a it's a form of it's a form of desire and pride. Let's see what it is to say here. It's one of the 20 secondary mental afflictions, and not one that is often been focused on. So the description is quite interesting. So it says, where is it here?
Haughtiness.
Haughtiness. Is that how I translate it?
No, I don't know how you translated it.
It's similar to that one of the 7 deadly sins that we talked about eating. What's that called?
Gluttony.
Gluttony.
No, not that.
Like gluttony?
That's not gluttony.
Doesn't it mean
well, it may be somewhat loosely related to that, but it's not directly. It's more something that is associated with youth, where like especially people who lead a sort of kind of heedless lifestyle, and one that is devoted to pleasure and
hedonism.
Kind of, yes. Hedonism, not in the philosophical sense,
right?
But hedonism more in the sense of just indulgence of, you know, pleasurable lifestyle.
As an adjective, doesn't it mean something like corpulent?
There is one, the gyak. Tsakpa. That's a lot Tsakpa, and that actually it's not so much. I don't know. I think I know what you're talking about, but it means to just bulk, not necessarily, being overweight or fleshiness or usually corpulent is considered like overweight.
Right.
But this is more like, like to increase your strength.
Right, bulk or something.
Yeah, like that, not like that. So, okay, so in that verse is one of those is kind of like Yakirmala. Nyembe Chirmala is a kind of pride. And then Tak Chirmala, Tak is the one of corpulence. Okay, so where is it? 20 seconds. Conceit. That's a conceit. Then in Tibetan.
Yeah, because you got haughty.
It's a kind of pride. Yeah, it's a kind of pride.
It's a conceitedness.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting description here. Let's see if I can find it. The Tibetan says.
The paragraph there with one's something. That's what he said. Like that youthful kind of your wealth and your stature and.
So it has to do with status.
To make yourself stronger, right? So that's.
Oh, it has an intoxication with one's advantages.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so it's a status.
Well, it's a sort of it's the idea like that young people have where, they're it's kind of they're indestructible. They can do and they want to and they just want to have a good time and get together with their friends and party on.
Yeah, right. Related also to sort of consumptiveness.
Right.
Bill and Ted.
Right, and but the kind of the spiritually dangerous part of that is that it leads to bangmel. It leads to rash, heedless behavior, right? And so it's the opposite of sort of reflective and kind of being aware of what you're thinking and doing and being careful in what you say and careful in what so that is also a part of the description of learning to practice moderation in eating. It's not only the food itself, but it's kind of the behavior that you engage in relating to the food. So in the Hinayana system, it should be, equanimity. Like chew your food, keep chewing your food, even meditate on how unattractive the food is in your mouth as you masticate it into some kind of horrible thing as a way of sort of overcoming your attachment to it.
Wow.
And then thinking, oh, and by the way, where's it going to end up? It's going to end up, coming out the other end of my body.
Wow.
So all of that is to think that, food is not something to be attached to. So I don't know, do we get off track a little bit? This is
Fleshing out the details.
I think we did a little bit, right? Oh yeah. So this is saying we shouldn't be greatly attached to our bodies in the food that we provide it with. And I was saying, what I really was saying, that we can be. I kind of just kept going when I was talking about the idea of being extreme in only eating the food that is considered organically pure, and not to say there's anything wrong with organic food. mind you, I'm not saying that, but you can get a little bit carried away with the food that you. I mean, after all, the ordained people are supposed to beg for food and eat whatever they're given, and in that way, sort of develop less attachment for the food. So I was just sort of addressing that in relation to the fact that you can go too far in the other direction when it comes to sort of trying to preserve your health. There is kind of, a balance to be made. Okay, so now the second verse is to say that we shouldn't be overly indulgent of our body. Minam dunga luni le keshin dewa shenle na dunga kwingi no yurba kokba lache kitagu. Okay, so this is saying the pleasure is kind of saying this: whatever pleasure is experienced through the body is not due to the nature of the body itself. It's something external to the body that you make use of, and which then generates some kind of transient enjoyment. But the body itself is a source of pain, and just a kind of inhabiting your body in and of itself is inhabiting an unsatisfactory state. So here it says, Minam dunge minam dunge lun ni le geshin. So it's saying the body itself, in and of itself, all that is able to give to us is painful experience. Whatever pleasure physical pleasure we derive, it's from something outside of the body that we apply to the body, right? And so the body itself is it is a vessel, right? A receptacle, which is a source of all kinds of suffering. So therefore, why should we look upon the body with great regard? Gua here is usually translated as respect, but it means sort of to be feeling a sense of solicitousness towards the body. So the body itself should be thought of. So we should think of the body on its own as something that is a source of suffering for us, and whatever pleasure that we gain through the body is by something outside of the body that we introduce to it. It's not coming from the body itself. And moreover, that suffering, that pleasure, whatever pleasure that might be, doesn't say this in the verse, but it's saying that is something that is only temporary anyway, right? So he says, that means we shouldn't be overly attached to our body in the way that we take care of it, because so he says one of the kinds of sufferings that the body brings us inherently is hunger and thirst, right? So hunger and thirst is a sensation that the body generates naturally when it is deprived of food and drink. So that experience, that kind of suffering, that is coming from the body itself. Luni lekeshin means from on its own, right? From the body itself. That kind of then discomfort arises. The body on its own gives us that discomfort. Then the satisfaction that we can experience by eating food and taking some kind of drink, that is a kind of temporary pleasure which the body can experience, but that that pleasure, means that slight pleasure, that alleviation of the hunger and thirst, that comes from some outer factor, something that falls outside of the body. It's not inherent in the body itself. So it's not that the body is giving us that. The idea is that especially if you're attached to food, if you like to eat food, it's that food, the pleasure that you get from eating is something that you experience when you introduce food to the body, and then that experience of enjoying the pleasurable taste that you associate with food, that's something that you associate with the body. That's kind of like, you're kind of indulging your body. But this is saying that, and that's what causes us to feel attachment, right? So we may associate that with our bodies, but in fact, that pleasurable experience that we get by introducing that food into our bodies is not something that the body itself produces. It's something that we experience when we provide something external to the body. So it's not the body that is giving us that pleasurable experience. It's the food that we introduce to our bodies. So there's kind of, I think there's part of what these verses are about is directly they're saying one thing. Indirectly, they're addressing the psychology of some kind of erring behavior. And I think that's one of the ways of interpreting these verses is that the verses directly kind of giving us some kind of instruction about how to properly view the body, and that if we're really, then what should I say? If we are kind of clever, or if we are, intelligent, we can infer from it. We can understand how it is indirectly talking about inappropriate behavior, and how we need to correct that inappropriate behavior, right? And this is one way to. This is the means of correcting that inappropriate behavior. So you kind of have to read the inappropriate behavior into the verses. I think if you do that, it takes on more meaning. That's what I meant by saying, don't sort of dismiss the verses as overly simplistic in their import. Okay. So it says, so whatever pleasure is experienced in the body is when you introduce something from outside the body into the body. Therefore, the body itself should be thought of on its own as something that needs to be taken care of, because if it isn't taken care of, it's going to remind you that it needs to be taken care of. So it is something that cannot be neglected, but at the same time, kind of providing for the physical needs of the body is something different from overindulging. And the overindulgence is something that comes from mistakenly thinking of the body as some kind of source of pleasure. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So then he says, now, kokpa here is another word for the body. In that translation, she uses the word hull. Kokpa usually means, it's translated in Tibetan, kokpa can mean when it's not what this means. I'm not sure what the original Sanskrit is. It could be just another word for body. I don't know. But there, in Tibetan vernacular, kokpa is like the entire carcass of a slaughtered animal. For instance, like you might see in a butcher shop, or like a whole goat or a whole, cow or something. That's a kokban. So that's why I think she translated as hull, meaning that sort of like the disemboweled, kind of this vessel of the body. And maybe there is such a word. I don't know what the original Sanskrit is, but on the other hand, it might just be another word that is another word for the body. So it says, why dila chitegu? Chitegu means, so why are you so being so attentive to this body? It's saying, bebe, and then here, this is very nice. This is here it says, this is a little bit of a shortened version of what is in Chandrakirti's commentary, and what he says is, how should we? So the verb is, by the way, there's at the end here it says, bebe kewa drup nubatang segola tembe nyaba mijua tetamdu jebar chao. Do you have that in the Tibetan? Which is like the word to cut.
Yes.
That's a typo. I believe the correct spelling is jawa. Bao cha a jawa. And that's not a common verb. And that verb jawa sometimes can mean to chew. It doesn't mean that here. I believe what it means here is to take care of, to maintain the body, right? So this verb here is the action that you do to take care of the body, right? In the previous verse it said suma. Suma means to guard or protect or preserve, take care of the body. Now here, this verb is preceded by some phrases, and here it says, Gawa drup nuba. It's just the purpose for preserving the body or taking care of the body is just to enable you to cultivate virtue. Gawa drup nuba. So you want your body to be healthy and strong and vigorous so that you can cultivate virtue as much as you're physically able, right? To the best of your abilities. And then the second thing here it says is, Sego la tembe nyeba minjunga. Then this is what I mentioned kind of before in the saying that in relation, so how do you take care of the body? Well, the most basic way is to give it the sustenance, the physical food and drink to nourish the body, right? So here it says that se and also gur. Gur means in clothing, right? Clothing is to protect the body from the elements, right? Where from the cold and the heat, both. So then here it says, Sego la temba means when you use those things, right? You should do it in such a way, nyeba minjuma. So using food and clothing, you should use food and clothing to preserve your body, but do that in a way that does not cause you to engage in inappropriate behavior, wrongful behavior, non-virtuous behavior. So we talked a little bit about how food can lead to mistaken kind of get all excited and develop bangme and gyapa and so on. Then also nagil, right? Sometimes the clothing that you wear out of vanity and to kind of show off, or so. Then you shouldn't be using. The clothing should not serve that kind of purpose, because that is not preserving the body. That is, using it to then create non-virtuous activity. So he says, the phrase that this is an abbreviation of Chandrakirti's phrase here, which I think is, first of all, he says, Jitar Samba. Jitar Samba means, number one, first and foremost, to preserve your life, to keep yourself, to live a long and healthy life. Number one. Number two, gawa pelorgyo. Then to use your body as a way of increasing your virtue. Then that here's the gawa drupa, it says, right? Number three says, Nyeba Juma Mingurwa. Nyeba Juma Mingurwa means so that you shouldn't create any faults. Here literally means then misconduct, right? And then it says, Dremba Tsamgi. Dremba Tsamgi means that should be, here, that's that word smrti, right? So it says you be mindful or keep in the back of your mind that I'm going to take care of my body thinking these things so that I will continue to live as long as possible, be able to continue to practice. I will take care of my body so that I can engage in as much virtue as possible. And I will take care of my body. And as I do that, I will try to make sure that I don't engage in any kind of inappropriate behavior. So take care of your body that way, right? So he's saying the same thing similarly, but I kind of like the language that Chandkirti says. So that's this verse. Maybe we'll finish this verse and then we'll stop. It says, and this one is this is an interesting simile. He says, Perna Shasamo. Shasamo is like a female demon. Shasamo Sukzebe Chaje Tomba Shik. So the story, the simile is that some traveler in a kind of what should I say, in a isolated area where he's traveling alone, he happens to come along sees this beautiful woman. She's unattended and she's by herself and she doesn't seem to be, have any means of, traveling. So he's traveling along in a wagon or a cart or something. So he stops and he picks her up. And then he picks her up, the idea being, he's just doing a good deed. And then as he goes along, then some really ugly and threatening and some kind of frightening demoness appears to him, and then he takes out his sword and he smites the demoness and cuts her in half. But instead of destroying her, she turns into two demonesses. So then he cuts them in half, and then they turn into 4 demonesses. And so he's multiplying this ugly appearance to him. And then all of a sudden, out of the sky, he hears a voice saying to him, no, don't do that. You have to destroy this beautiful woman next to you, and then all of those will disappear. So he does so, and then his problem is solved. That is the example that is given here. So the question is, how does that illustrate what this verse is talking about? Right? So here he says, Perna shasamo subzebe chaje tombashik. Okay, so this is a demoness who emanates herself in some beautiful form. Subzebe chaje tomba means she reveals herself. She emanates herself in that. Tombashik means such an emanation appeared on the side of the road. Mishigi means, and this other traveler, a certain person, Shintala Gyamba means, Gyamba is the active, means to he caused her to mount the cart. So he took her on board his cart. Gyamba Dang means, so he took her on and then continued on his travels. Then not long afterwards, Dun means in front of them, Shasa Minduk Bashik. Then a really ugly demoness appeared, and Redi number Jeb. Then with his sharp sword, he cut her, but and he cut her in 2. And so Shasa Nisugur became 2 demonesses. Then Yikyang Jebe cut both of them in half. Shirgur, they became 4. Then this is like some kind of protector god, some kind of protector god for this person. Then told him from the sky, means kill the woman that you picked up in your cart, and then all of them will be destroyed. He did so, and Shebatar means then that's the end of the story. Then like that, it says, so now this is supposedly interpreting the verse. The verse is saying, Mitakpa dang dungel gomne lula chagpapante. So saying the moral of this story is by meditating on the impermanence and suffering nature of your body, then you will overcome your attachment to it. And therefore, rather than being indulgent of your body, now this is a little bit kind of, what should I say? I don't know, shocking is not the right word, but it says, rather, you should be intent upon making certain that your body does not arise in the future. So what it's saying is your body is something which you achieved when you took birth in this life. You took birth in this life is the continuation of your samsaric existence. So this body is a manifestation of and a kind of then what is it? A continuation of your samsaric existence. So you shouldn't be overly then indulgent of your body, because if you do that, all you're doing is continuing your attachment to your samsaric existence. And really, you should see your body as the kind of the vessel in which your samsaric existence is takes place. And therefore, what you should be intent upon doing is putting an end to, generating a new body. It's saying it quite in that extreme of form. If you rather strive to prevent your body from being arising in the future, then all of your suffering will disappear.
So
that's supposedly how to interpret that story. So you mistake that that emanation of a demoness is you're mistaking your physical body for something beautiful, something to take care of, and something out of which you experience more and more pleasure and more enjoyment. That rather, if you think of that, if you overcome your attachment for that body, which is not really attractive and not really a source of true pleasure, and you destroy the source of that body, then you will put an end to all your samsara suffering. Something like that. I don't know.
The opposite being that if you maintain your attachment, you just generate lots and lots of demons.
That's right. That you're continuing to
flesh-eating demonesses.
Something like that. Okay. So anyway, so this is quite a kind of what should I say? A different direction from the first verse, right? The first verse says, "Body is seen to be like an enemy by the Aryas. Nevertheless, it's something that needs to be taken care of. On the other hand, the body should not be mistaken as the source of pleasure. Its ultimate nature is suffering, and therefore we shouldn't be overly attached to it." That's I think so. We're starting to get into the idea of the body as being then that having that quality of Nengenlin, right? Nengenlin, which we talked about in the beginning at length. Okay, so maybe we'll stop there. This is just the beginning of the first maybe 8 or 9 verses or so are focused on the body. From there, it's going to go to Tsarwas,
Oh.
And when we get to Tsarwas, then we're going to talk more about the suffering of change and whether pleasure there is any such thing as real pleasure. And then at some point towards the end of the chapter, I believe, we'll get into the suffering condition of just.
Could you say that, that phrase, Ranten?
Uh-huh. Rantenba.
Yeah, Rantenba. Could you say that, could it have been interpreted or translated as pleasure as such?
Yeah, you can say that way. Yeah, sure. Meaning that Dewa has its own, essential characteristics, which are fundamentally different in kind from the qualities of pain.
Yeah.
And the two are, it's not in any way that they are, one is a matter of degree of difference from the other, right? So, okay. What will we recite now? Huh? There's the Manlam, the Lamrim Manlam.
You have?
Should have it.
Yeah.
What does it say? Okay. Dani rindu bele chonini katarayang bakanshi sabade lo me mari di dong rowanam nam drenga we wambo da gyuchi derma zambe zira kunduyam Jambe yangi zewe jesune, dembe rimba guntan langi cho, nyene drube gyana nye jesho, rangi jishin tokbe langi ne, shudra zewe jangbe takegi, Jowe yigi mumba se jene, gewe demba yurin zingushik, demba rinjin chogi makyabam, kya kanyamba gyurbe chokderni, ninje chembe yira gyobayi, Pende terde sawarje barsho, seje gawe me junjin lele, lenju chanju langi rimbe kyan, dandu namgi yila petershin, gawe te barindu kyong gyuji, Lam san drube tengen druje Gegen ze mi dami min kun Sera gundu gewe nyakbayi Nam dalam dandra waraman gyurji Kanze teba chola chuchuchu Sushin drubla zamba deise, Dunen nangi tatu drojejin, Rashi gasu kun kya gyoroji, Dewadi kyokun sanam yeshe tozoshin, Sonam yeshe lejunwe, Tamba kunyi toparedo.